Today, we're joined by a trailblazer in Prince George's County politics, Councilwoman Jolene Ivey. She has decades of public service under her belt through her current role as an at-large member of the County Council and former state delegate. As the Councilwoman sets her sights on the current of the county executive seat, we're diving into her vision for the county, her record, and her priorities that will shape her leadership. But before we get into the heavy stuff, let's get to know a little more about the person behind the politics. Councilwoman Ivey, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Sherman. I appreciate it.
Yes, awesome, awesome. So you've worked on the Jesse Jackson presidential campaign, which have must have been an experience in itself. Can you share a moment from that time that shaped you and how you view politics today?
Well, I think I was just so excited when I heard he was running. I ran down to his office in DC and just signed up to volunteer. And I'm not going to present this as if I were a big integral part of his campaign, unless getting him hot chocolate on a Saturday in the middle of DC when it was a wasteland back there. Do you
Mhm.
know how hard it was to find a place open to get him some hot
I
chocolate? I
could
was very proud
imagine.
of myself. But yeah, I was answering the phones. I'd see him in the office. He was always very kind.
Well, I can say this as a former candidate, and you as a candidate, someone that gets you hot chocolate in any condition, and especially when it's freezing like this,
Yes.
that person is something special. And I'll share a little bit about this as well. I actually wish I was around that time because I would have ran there with you because Jesse Jackson has definitely influenced me in the way that I think about politics. Definitely, I love his speeches, and he was a phenomenal speaker as well. What books have you read recently or that stuck with you over the years that influenced your leadership style or how you approach public service?
I have to say, I read mostly fiction
Mhm.
and I mostly read it when I'm on vacation. I no
Okay.
longer have time to just read for pleasure during the regular year.
Mhm.
One year I read 5 books in 1 week when we were on vacation. It was glorious.
Right, right.
This past year, we had a newborn grandbaby with us, and I read half a book. So I would say that I'm more likely to be reading the news. I
Mhm.
don't tell anybody, but I still read the Washington Post every day. And we have that delivered to the house as well as the New York Times. As a former journalist, I just think it's important to support media.
Mhm.
And I know that they're not perfect. I know we're all mad at Jeff Bezos and some of his actions over the
Mhm.
past several months, but he's not the journalist,
Right,
right? He's
right.
not the people actually writing and producing. He's someone who's making decisions above them, and I don't want to penalize them.
Mhm.
And since we lost papers like the Prince George's Journal, I really think it's even more important for us to do all we can to support local journalism as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely believe in journalism as well and preserving that institution of, it's another leg of our democracy, if that makes sense. And,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. And keep in mind, I was having my master's in journalism from the University of Maryland, and I got my undergraduate degree from Towson in mass communication. So that's a big focus of mine. And when you talk about it being one of the legs of democracy, I truly believe that. And I
yeah.
think it's really hurt us to not have more media.
Absolutely, yeah, especially at the local level.
Mhm.
And what I will, a tip for you, you should check out Audibles or even our public library system for everyone out there. They have their form of Audible as well that you can, listen to the book. So um, go check out the library, get you a card. And of course, you can get some books to read to the kids, so you can add those along to it, the grandbabies.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's get into it. Why are you running for county executive? What do you believe that you bring to this race that no one else can?
This is just such a great opportunity. We have for the next conceivably 10 years an opportunity to make real lasting change here in the county. We have a tendency to have to kind of go by 4-year increments, and that does generally turn into 8 years. But to have 10 years where you can really focus on highlighting the good things in our county and changing the things that need to be changed. I think it's just such a great opportunity for whoever wins. And obviously, I would rather that person be me. I trust myself more than I trust anybody else. And I know that when it comes to making sound decisions for the county, it's just so important to have somebody who is steady and who keeps the county and its residents at top of mind.
Okay. And so, and on that, you previously mentioned that you aren't a planner when it comes to your career and that you have to do the job in front of you right now. But critics say that you start your campaign for county executive before being sworn in as an at-large council member. How
Yeah,
do you
that's
reconcile
people.
this perception that you're seeking personal desires rather than the job before you?
The people who say that obviously don't know me
Mhm.
and haven't spent 2 minutes talking to me. So I kind of blow them off. The reality is, it was not my goal to run for the at-large position. I'm very happy to have it, but it wasn't my goal. I wasn't sitting around saying, you know what I really want to do is run at large. No,
Right.
my intention had always been to run for county executive. We just had a situation last summer that I had to react to in the moment, and I believe I did the right thing. So, having the right people in leadership is so critical, and I know that I did the right thing at the right time for the county, not for my personal goals. For my personal goals, this actually makes it harder for me because I
Mhm.
had to spend most of my campaign money last summer running at
Right.
large. That makes it a lot harder
Yeah,
for me
yeah.
to
And
run for county executive when that was my goal.
yeah,
So,
especially with, having to ask, the ask, as a candidate say, hey, can you pitch in $5 for me or $10 for me and stuff like that. So I definitely understand. Well, I do want to ask, so what was the change or the difference between because you said you had to, the opportunity for the at-large seat. What was different or what would be different switching from District 5 to the at-large seat?
well, being at large gives you obviously a countywide platform. And within the county council, there's a tendency to kind of defer to the person who is the district council member. But the at large members do have a role to play. So
Absolutely.
therefore, when issues come to me, and they came to me as a District 5 council member, I couldn't always get as involved in the issue as I wanted to be because you had to defer to the district person. But as that large position, you definitely have the authority to go ahead and take on the issues as well. So it's a good position to be in.
I definitely understand that, and thinking for the county as a whole is a little different than having a district, and that's what the intention of having that large members where it was to think about the entire county, not just a particular district. Prince George's County revenue structure has long been criticized as off balance, heavily relying on residential property taxes. What's your plan to address this imbalance and sustainable growth and ensure sustainable growth?
Well, there's so many things we need to do to be able to do that. We always say that we need to increase our business tax base, and this is true. The question is, how do we get there, right? And so part of that is with DPI. You know, I think that we have some really wonderful people who work in that department for sure, without a doubt. We need to have more of them. We need to have more people. That's in fact one of the very few agencies that got an increase in the budget that we passed during this past year. We make cuts everywhere, but we did not cut there. We gave them an increase because that's how important DPI is. And we need to further increase the number of people who work there and also come up with new ways to do the permitting process. So if it takes too long to get a permit to open a business in Prince George's County, businesses just choose to go elsewhere.
Yeah,
And
and I have a question really quick about DPI and speaking of the personnel and leadership. So when under the previous administration, we had Melinda Bowling, who was the director of that organization, and she had been previously under investigation from DC. So how do we ensure that we get quality personnel to lead and manage, our departments? Because having the people doing the work is different from, the as one of my mentors say, the speed of the leader is the speed of the pack. How do we make sure that the pack leader is up to speed?
You're correct. It's so important to have strong leadership, and that's up to the county executive, right? Whoever is the county executive chooses those leaders. And the council, you know, we go through a process, but we always affirm whoever it is that the county executive has sent. It's extremely rare. I don't know if it's ever happened that the county council did not say, we accept the county executive's pick. Now, with that in mind, I think the county executive position is even more important when it comes to choosing who's going to run these agencies. Now, I believe that our leadership there is strong at this moment because we have Dawit there. Dawit Abraham is now the head of DPI. He's been there a long time, but he was not in the leadership position. So he came up through the ranks. He's had an opportunity over the last year to really get in there in that position and figure out what's wrong. So I think having the freedom under me as county executive and the encouragement will help him to do a great job in pulling that agency forward. He has other great people who work for him as well. I think they just need to have the authority to make the changes they need to make in order to make things more streamlined. I'm in constant contact with him, and I know how seriously he takes his job. And I know that we can take DPI from the point it is now to the place where businesses look at Prince George's County and say, you know, it won't be hard to set up shop there. We want to come and make money in Prince George's County. That's what we want them to do.
Absolutely.
Because when they're making money, we're making money.
I know that's right. And and back to our budget and and taxes. People are still wondering how you were able to balance the budget as a council member. Can you break down your specific role and decisions in that process? What specific agencies received cuts, or how did that process work?
Well, the county executive sends their version of the budget, and I think that's around March 15th. And then from that point, it's in the council's hands. So the council holds hearings and talks to all the agencies. And then there comes a point in May where there are meetings between the county executive and her designees and the council leadership. So we spend time going over areas of agreement and areas that we need to work through. The one thing that I thought was really effective in this last budget was finding ways to not fire anyone. No one got fired. No one no one lost any money who was a county employee. We just didn't hire anybody for a while. We really delayed hiring a lot. Now that does hurt services. I'm not going to say that it doesn't, because when you're calling the county and you need something addressed, if there are just 3 people who can fill that compared to 6, well, obviously that's going to slow down the process. So, it could have been a lot worse though, had we fired people instead of just not hiring, leaving a lot of positions open for a long time. It made it hard as a government, but it seemed the most compassionate way to get through it. So that's one thing that we did. And another is every agency, for the most part, took a cut. So that's problematic to me for something like social services or the health department. I mean, they're on such a shoestring budget as it is. Asking them to take a cut is really not something that you want to do. On the other hand, we have to fund public safety. We have to fund education, and in this case,
And it's
we
because of the
also,
mandates that many of
well,
those come with.
there's mandates for education, but for public safety, the mandate is more internal. Like, you need more police officers,
Right.
period. You just need them. You need more firefighters. You just do.
Right.
So in order to fill those basic public safety needs, you have to give them more money. And so we did. We gave more money to the police department, especially to sweeten the pot for when they're hiring people. It helps with bonuses, and it helps them to be able to be a little more flexible on the bonuses. If they find someone, a candidate who they really, really want, but another jurisdiction is trying to hire them with a greater bonus, well, we can match the bonus and maybe beat it. So
Yes.
it's that kind of flexibility that's important to make sure you get the right people and the right jobs. And I know it was the right call to be able to hire more police and hire more firefighters.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely sounds great. So, what you basically says you were done was you held back some positions, and then every agency took a cut. So, how does that translate to service? Like, what will the how will the county see this on the back end?
Well, we hopefully the county is not feeling it. Hopefully the residents aren't. We are in the new budget now where we did fund the really important things. So hopefully people are feeling an improvement of services like with DPI, the Department of Permitting Enforcement, um, inspections and enforcement. It's really important that we increase the amount of people that we have doing code enforcement and who are also helping with their permitting process. Both are really important to the quality of life of our county and for economic development. So I'm glad we were able to do that, and hopefully people can feel that. I don't know if they have felt the reduction of some of the positions that weren't filled for quite a while, but I think we're back on track now.
Yes. And one of the great wins for seniors in our community was the passing of the senior tax credit bill, but has now been placed on hold by the acting county executive. And you said that the senior tax bill was poorly written, but you voted for it twice. Now that it's on
Yeah.
hold due to affordability concerns, why support legislation you publicly criticize? And what's your standard for passing laws to protect taxpayers?
I think that from the beginning, every single one of us has wanted to provide relief to seniors. It's so important, and we all know it. And we're just trying to figure out the best way to do it. While we're working through it, I've been in conversation with the acting county executive, and we've come up with a plan that I think will work. So we still need to work through it with our other council members, but we're going to have something that is more responsible to the county and yet serves the seniors we're trying to help.
And one of the main problems with some of the council members had with the bill was the fact of the limitations on it. They felt like in certain districts, their seniors would not be eligible to receive this tax credit and they would be left out. So how do we find that balance to ensure that, if we're going to do something for the seniors, that it reaches those who are most vulnerable, or to ensure that it's equity in this program, that it's not actually discriminatory against, based on financial status or any sense of like that. How do we come to a common ground to make sense?
Well, the way the bill was written, it had a dollar amount cut off on how much a house could be valued, and the senior received the break, and I think that was $500,000. That's why a lot of people, or some people, were concerned because they felt that there weren't houses in their district that were valued at that level. And that is true, I guess, to an extent. You're going to have more houses in certain districts that have a lower dollar amount that they're valued at than others. That's just how
Yeah.
it works.
And
So
even as an agent, we understand that property values are going to change. So to, put a finite number on a bill, that's going to cause to have to be amendments and different things like that done in the future as well.
right,
Um,
absolutely. I really wish that we could do it in a way that reaches seniors based on their income and not on the value of the house. Because what if a senior is really struggling financially and their house has just increased exponentially in value? Well, that senior probably isn't going to be qualified under the current bill. And that's one of the concerns I've had. So
Yeah.
the thing is, when it comes to legislation, it's rare that you get much of anything that everybody agrees on 100%. Everybody usually has a little bit of heartburn about part of it. And if you waited all the time to have the perfect bill that you completely agree with, good chance nobody else will. So you
Right.
can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And so that's why you end up with these situations where there's a bill that you like part of it, but you don't like all of it, but you still vote for it because what
Right.
else are you going to do? Like never
Right.
vote for anything. You don't get your way 100% of the time.
Common ground. And that's exactly what Jesse Jackson talked about as well, common ground. The current council has taken steps to limit townhouse construction. Opponents to this bill says that it stifles growth and affordable housing options. What's your stand on this issue, and how do you approach housing development if elected to council to county executive?
You know, we hear some people in the community complain about townhouses, but then in the next breath, they'll tell you how important affordable housing is. Townhouses are just more affordable. So I think at a certain point, we have to get our noses out of the air. And clearly, so many people do appreciate townhouses, or they wouldn't be bought so readily. I don't see a lot of townhouse developments going up where nobody's buying them, right? So clearly, there's a market for them. And even though it might be something that we've had to get used to, it's a national trend. This isn't something that's just in Prince George's County. Any place where you have more limited land options, the more houses you can put or units you can put on that piece of land, the more economical it is, and the less expensive that unit will be to the customer.
Right. And especially when we're talking about saving the trees. I mean, you cut down more trees for a planned unit development with single family homes than you do with townhouses. And also you have to think about land value and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, and I want to talk about something that's made local news, and everybody's been talking about the battle between municipalities. The Hospital Hill project has created confusion between the towns of Bladensburg and Cheverly. What's your take on this issue, and what role do you see yourself in resolving it, both as a council member and potentially as a county executive?
I think that Bladensburg is wrong, you know, and I think that their leaders know that their position is wrong. I'm hoping that they can rethink their position before this goes any further, because for 5 years, Cheverly has been working with the developer and the county on this project. The county had asked Cheverly not to put in an annexation request until after the development was completed. And Cheverly, being a good partner, had gone along with that. So to have Bladensburg truly sneak around their leadership, not their residents, but sneak around and put this in, and it's like they knew that Cheverly was the one who was working with them. Cheverly is completely bordering this project. There's no daylight between Hospital Hill and Cheverly. You can clearly have 1 foot in each side at the same time. Um, Bladensburg came up with this very convoluted line that starts to look like one of those gerrymandered maps in order to try to put in this application. And I think that ultimately it could hurt the project. I've heard the developer be very concerned about this turn of events, and I'd hate to see all the state money that has gone into this project go to waste
Mhm.
because
Absolutely.
Bladensburg is determined to do something that they're not right to be doing. I mean, there are other areas that they've talked about annexing that would have been fine. But for them to take over or try to take over a piece of land that they have no relationship with, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Thank you. And municipalities in Prince George's County often feel sidelined by county leadership. How would you work with them to ensure their voices are heard and their needs are met?
I think it all starts with relationships. And I know that I have strong relationships with the municipal leaders around the county. Most of them endorsed me when I ran at large, you know, just last summer. I haven't kind of revisited them lately for this race to ask even for their endorsement, at least not yet. But I've had really strong relationships with the mayors, with the councils. And just like I give my cell phone number out at community meetings, pretty sure every municipal leader in the county must have my cell phone number. And I do answer texts, particularly, not as great at phone calls. If you call me and I'm busy, I'm not going to answer the call. And I'm really bad about checking voicemail, and it's a personal failure. But I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm telling you this is how I am. But if you text me, I'm going to answer your text. I might not do it within those 3 seconds, but I'm going to do it probably by that evening. So,
I am so
mhm.
glad that they now have the voicemail to text because,
Isn't
I'm not
it?
going to fault you for it because I don't listen to voicemails either. I'm like, text me, please.
Right. Yeah,
So,
reading notes is much better.
absolutely, because I can get to it.
Right.
Transportation continues to be a key issue. What's your plan for improving public transit, including the metro and the bus, to better serve the county's growing population?
The bus particularly needs to extend service on weekends and in the southern part of the county. There are areas that people down there don't have any other options. If you don't have a car, you're going to have a hard time connecting yourself with even the metro because it's so far away. How are you going to get there? So the bus, back when I was chair of the delegation in Annapolis, we had a moment where we were negotiating things with the state, and I remember in that moment getting an extra $5 million for the southern part of the county for the bus. So back then, even though I did not in any way represent the southern part of our county, I was pushing and supporting and making sure it happened that we got increased service for South County on the bus. And now I do represent the whole county. Now I do represent them. So obviously it'll continue to be a priority. And yeah, we need to look at the routes and make sure that we're giving access to more people.
Yeah, and I'll definitely say, as a person who lives in South County, it is definitely something that's needed. I myself wanted to catch the bus to get to Branch Avenue Station in order to go to the airport, but on the weekends, or it's very difficult and challenging. And also, I worked at Exit Landmark Realty over on Schultz, and one day I wanted to walk to work, and that or catch the bus, and both of those were very challenging. So South County deserves to have to be looked at a little more as it pertains to those things. Now, on transportation, how do we balance the future with the right now? And to expound upon that, often in our younger minds, especially those who become dependent on cars, doesn't think more about the mature version of ourselves when we progressively age and can no longer drive, or the future generations that thrive on ride sharing and want the walkable communities. How do we balance this the right now with the future?
Well, everybody benefits when an area is more walkable. I mean, no matter if you have a car or not, most people prefer to live someplace that you can get around to places you want to go on foot or on your bicycle. So I've always supported extending our trails. I believe that our trails are only as strong as our weakest link. And one thing that I promote every time I have an opportunity is when you're talking about whether it's bike trails or whatever, if they're not protected, then people aren't going to use them. So you know how you see those bike trails on the road where they just painted a little bicycle in one of the lanes to let you know that's a great spot to ride in on your bicycle if you want to get hit by a car, right? They should just put a little X on your little target on your back on that picture too, because
Absolutely. And we definitely have a problem here in Prince George's County with pedestrian fatalities. And that's something that should be explored as well.
no, absolutely. And the more we do to protect bike lanes, you're protecting people. It's not that the bikes you're trying to protect, you're trying to protect the people on the bicycles and increase the number of people who are willing to take a bicycle or to walk. So the more comfortable and the more people feel safe, the more they will take advantage of these options, and it's better for all of us.
Mhm. There's a glaring disparity in rooftops and development between the northern and southern part of the county. which directly impacts retail and dining options. How would you work with the EDC to address what some say see as discriminatory practices? With downtown Largo or development near Prince George's Community College into Upper Marlboro factor into your strategy?
We have a disagreement, what I can see, in the southern part of the county for what people want. Some people want to have big rural areas with as few people, as few cars as possible. And then some people want to have areas with really strong growth. And in order to have the amenities that they're asking for, whether it's restaurants, retail, whatever it is they want, as you were saying, the rooftops have a big impact on what stores or what restaurants come. There are formulas that these stores use to decide where to go. And it really depends on how many people live there, and that would have to do with the rooftops, what their educational level is, because that impacts their income. So if you have people who are very spread out in an area, then that makes it less attractive for a restaurant or for a store to want to come. They're going to make less money, and so therefore they don't want to come. So if we're going to have those amenities, then we do need to be able to put more housing in particular areas, at least, so that the people who want to live like that can have those amenities. I don't think it's fair for someone who wants to live in a very rural area to complain that they don't have a coffee shop next door, because that's just not going to happen. Those things don't go together.
Definitely understand that. And I want to move over to talking about policing and criminal justice and public safety in our county. What's your plan for tackling crime in Prince George's, and how would you balance the community policing with public safety needs?
Well, I think that community policing affects public safety, right? So if we have police officers, if we have enough police officers and they're able to get out of their cars and, have that extra space to be able to walk around and talk to people, that helps us all be more safe. We can't just have police officers who are in their cars, who are removed from the people who they're supposed to be keeping safe. It's just harder for them to do their job. And so one thing we need to do is find ways to increase the number of police that we do have. And that includes their pay and also the respect that they get. A lot of times lately, the last several years, people have not wanted to become police officers because they feel disrespected in their community. And we can't have that. We have to make sure that the police officers we have, to the extent we can, come from our community. If they come from our community, they feel like part of our community because they are. And that's going to help keep us all safer. So increasing police, increasing the numbers of police officers who already live in Prince George's County, I think is just going to be really helpful. Also, we've had problems with youth crimes, and I'm not saying that we're special, right? We've had this kind of problem happen around the country again, but how we handle it it's got to be tailored specifically to our county. We know who the young people are who are creating problems. We already know. There are lists. I hate to have to tell you, but they do keep track. And by using that list in a proactive way, I think we can make a big difference. So I don't think parents necessarily know what their children are doing. They might not know that their child is creating problems in the community. So to be able to have a police officer, and this isn't my idea, this is an idea that came from one of the leaders in the police force, to have a police officer work with someone from social services, go through that list, make appointments with those families and talk to the parents, talk to the young people and see what's going on in their lives and what do they need help with, so you can do all we can to get them on the right track as early as possible, not deal with it in court once they've already committed crimes and someone's already been hurt. So the more we can be proactive, the better. And obviously, the more we can do to make young people feel like they are part of our community, that they are part of the solution, then I think they're gonna be more engaged and be more willing to look out for each other. You know, you need to have young people who are keeping tabs on their friends to say, dude, you can't do that, right? You got to come back over here. This is what we're doing. This is what's better for us and better for the community. So the more that we can support families and keep kids from getting on the wrong track, the better.
Parenting, you spoke so passionately about having conversations with your DNA about living while Black, such as not eating in the store, in the grocery stores until items were paid for. Something my mom taught me as well. My aunt is a different story. How does that translate into your legislation when it comes to criminal justice?
Well, I mean, the way I grew up is the same way you grew up, and the same way I've had to raise my five sons is to make sure that, unfortunately, that you know that you're being treated different. And just because we're in Prince George's County and it's majority minority, we don't live in a bubble. So we have to make sure that we're raising our children in a way that they understand how they're going to be perceived. And, you know, I'm really looking forward to a day then our whole society changes and everybody's viewed the same, but we're not there.
Yeah.
So in the right now, let's make sure our kids are educated about the world and educated about how to move in the world so that they are as safe as possible. It's scary out there, right? I've raised with my husband five Black sons in Prince George's County, and they're all doing well, praise God. But it wasn't always easy, and we worried. We worried. Sometimes we were worried about the police. Sometimes we were worried about people who said they were their friends, and sometimes we'd worry about strangers or somebody just in the car next to them as they
Mhm.
started to
Yeah.
drive. But
Yeah.
it's
And even
scary.
with that, we think that, because when I moved here, I saw a lot of African American police officers, and I was really, truly excited about that. And that was a selling point for me as well. But, we also have to think about, how even through law enforcement, there are African Americans and other minorities who still, have discriminatory practices, self-unconscious biases that impact their judgment and thinking as well. And the story that my mom always taught me about, eating stuff out of the store until the items were paid for. But my aunt, I remember when Dixie there were the tower of individual candy pieces, and my aunt was like, "Yeah, those are samples. You go ahead and try it." So my mom had to re-educate me and say, "Hey, don't ever do that again."
No,
um,
I definitely was more like your mom and not your aunt.
you've described data centers as money printing machines and justify their development as a means to grow our county's budget. Yet there are critics who say that data centers don't create many jobs and have limited long-term economic impacts beyond tax revenue. What do you respond to the opponents? What do you say to them?
I never said that data centers were perfect. I didn't say that they were job creators, although the jobs they do create are well-paying jobs. But that isn't what I said. I said that they are great at giving us tax money. And you know, we've had this budget deficit, like now it feels normal. Like every year we got to deal with a budget deficit. Even the state's got this like almost $3 billion
Yeah.
budget deficit. So it's a problem, and we can't act like it isn't. To act like that the only businesses that we can draw in are the perfect business that gives you a lot of tax money and a lot of great paying jobs that don't necessarily require a college degree and don't create a lot of traffic and don't. I mean, there are no perfect businesses, right?
Mhm.
We need to have businesses to give us money as well as businesses to give us jobs. And it's great when you can get both. But when it's time for us to balance the budget and we're looking at things to cut instead of programs to add that people will like having the new things, I don't think they're going to be thinking so much about where did the money come from. They're going to say, well, what's wrong with our government? They haven't even done anything to increase economic opportunity here in this
Mhm.
county. So it's important that we have every way to bring in money. I think with data centers, what we have to do is to make sure we're including the public at the front end as to where the dogs.
No.
Okay. If it's important that we include the public at the front end so that we can agree on where they should be. We're never going to be like Virginia where it has hundreds. It's not happening. But the ones that we do have, we have to make sure there's agreement among the public and understanding ahead of time about where there will be. And, I think they have evolved a lot over years. So some of the complaints people have about them are no longer relevant. For example, some people still complain about the amount of water that they use to keep everything cool inside. The ones I've seen use recycle the water. So they put the water in once and they just use that water. It's not where the water is like goes out and is replaced constantly. So you have to look at what the current technology is. There were also complaints about the noise. That doesn't seem to be the problem with the newer ones. So, we just have to make sure. I think that one of the bigger issues we have is where do they get their power from? And who is paying for the infrastructure for that power? And I believe that that needs to be paid for by the data centers themselves and not by the public. So,
Yeah. Well, hopefully they figure out a way to get renewable energy there as well.
oh,
And I will say, when
absolutely.
we think about this approach, you have to think, remember when DVD players first came out, they were so big and bulky and nobody wanted them,
Right.
and until they change, and now we don't even have DVD players. So, we have to be forward thinking. Developing a site as significant as the old Landover Mall could have been an opportunity to create mixed-use development with housing, retail, and entertainment to enhance the area. Why wasn't that approach pursued, and why do you see data centers and do you see data centers as a temporary fix or a permanent solution for that location?
Well, I have to tell you the truth. When I first got a call from the learners that they wanted to talk to me about their plan for that site, I was sure that they were about to give me this really exciting proposal that included all the things you just said. And when they came in and sat down and said data center, oh, I was not happy. I mean, at all. And one of the first things I did was call Dave Iannucci and complain. And he agreed with me that it wasn't the highest and best use of the land. However, a bill that we passed in the previous council that was sponsored by council members Derek Leon Davis and Tom Darnoga changed our procedures to make it easier for data centers to come because we didn't have any yet. And we could see them all going to other areas. And we knew that that was just money that we weren't getting. So I'm not criticizing them or that bill at all. I just want to make sure you understand the context. So part of that making it easier to come to the county, we didn't specifically look at that site, and say everywhere but not that site. I mean, that's not what we said. That's not what the bill said. And so it was allowed. And so once something is allowed and it belongs to them, it doesn't belong to us. That's not public land. So it's
Yeah, a
just
lot of
like,
people forget, and think that the council can stop, certain things from happening. And the public doesn't look at it as far as being sued by a private entity for, their constitutional right. So we also don't want another lawsuit on our hands to try to, prevent something that, is allowable through a law or legislation passed by the county.
exactly. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
unfortunate, but I mean, it is what it is, but we have learned from that experience and going forward, we're looking at ways to come up with an overlay zone so that we know ahead of time where data centers can go and can't go. So
absolutely.
that way it's going to make it a lot better for the public.
And you described the budget growth as a top priority. Beyond data centers, what are your other strategies to bring more income to the county without sacrificing long-term community needs and environmental health?
Well, one thing that we really need to do is increase the amount of federal money and state money that we get into this county. And I know we can do better. Last year, I found out about a grant that we could it's an earmark that we can get from the federal government. And I pressed really hard the Department of Environment to apply for it. And I mean, they did finally apply, but it was like pulling teeth to get this application in. And it was a simple application. And what it will do if we get it is provide $12 million to the county to build a animal control facility in the northern part of the county. We have one in South County, but we need more facilities, we need more space. And it's actually more people in the northern part of the county who actually adopt these animals. So to bring the animals closer to where the people are who adopt them is really important. And to be able to provide better care for these animals. I'm an animal person, you know, and I'm specifically want to make sure that we're safe and that we're taking care of our dogs and our cats. So, and there's a lot of different animals that come
Yeah,
through.
yeah, that's definitely important because I know if there's one group that shows up to the council or to the budget meetings are the advocates of the pets in Prince George's County for the shelter. So kudos to them and for this huge win. When you first
Well,
got
we
elected
haven't
to
won yet, but we
okay,
got
well
the
this is
application in. You know, I
well
mean, you have to
it's a
apply.
start. Yeah, it's a
We
start.
have to
You have
apply,
to
and
act.
we need to do better generally about applying, because the more you apply for, better chance you're going to get, and
Yeah.
that can bring in significant amounts of money for our county.
Absolutely. And when you first got elected to the council, you said that you were lucky to get the library in your district because you only asked for one thing. With 18 months to go, with 18 months to hold the seat as the county executive, should you be elected, what's one thing that you were going to do or want to do in those 18 months for the betterment of Prince George's County?
I think the one thing that I would focus on first, well, there's so many things that need to be done, but I will prioritize DPI just because that department is so important to be able to find ways to streamline the process so that people can get their permits more quickly and to be able to open their businesses. I know businesses that have tried to open that had to give up because they couldn't get through the permitting process. And that's not acceptable. So we can't say that we want to bring in businesses and then make it impossible for them to open.
So what's going to actually be different? What is it that Jolene Ivey is going to do different from previous administrations? Because I believe the previous county executive and now Senator Angela Alsobrooks, she did something where she separated some of the departments over there, or said that we were going to streamline it, or get better tech. What exactly is the problem that's happening, and how are you going to resolve it?
You know, she's done things that have improved things. And, you know, I'm not throwing any stones because when you look at technology in the county and our processes, things were being done on paper, right? That doesn't make any sense. How can you have people have to fill out a piece of paper anymore to do anything? So that was a big win for the county, and I'm proud of her for getting that done. There's so many other things, though. I mean, she couldn't do everything at once. If you look at the time she served, she had 6 years, and she had COVID almost right away. She barely got in, figure out where the bathroom was when COVID hit us. So, you know, getting us through that was really important, obviously. And then, you know, round two, she was spending obviously a lot of time running for US Senate, and I supported her, and I'm really glad that she won. So I think she did make some really good impacts on the county. I'm not going to be running
But
for
but but
Senate.
what is it that you are going to do for DePi though? Like, what exactly is it
Oh,
that
well,
you're
you
going to
know,
do to improve it?
one idea that has been discussed, I don't want to go into it too much, but there is a way that you can get everybody in the room who's involved with approving a permit, every agency, every department, everybody involved. You have them in one room, and the person seeking the permit does pay a higher fee for this, but they go in the morning and they have every agency there, and they come out at the other end of the day, with their permits. So I think that there are a lot of, developers who would look at this, or businesses or whatever. Time is money. The faster you can get through something, the better. So to be able to have everybody together, I think one of the complaints I've heard, I think since COVID, there have been more people obviously working from home. Well, and I think there's value to being able to work from home, but sometimes it's a problem when somebody comes in for a permit and they need to talk to the person at the next desk, but that person's working at home that day. What if you come in and every single person you need is in front of you and you can get through it that day? That's priceless.
Right. And that along with some of the other principles were sort of detailed in the housing opportunity for all community when they created the comprehensive housing strategy. I want to talk about affordable housing because that goes into the whole conversation of developers and also with DeepHigh as well. What are you going to do to aid in generating more affordable housing in Prince George's County? And what does affordability look like to you?
Well, let's start with the fact that Prince George's County is the most affordable area in the DMV. We're already the most affordable. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't people here who would like to move out of their parents' basement and can't afford to yet. But the more that we can do to produce more housing, period, at every price level, that gets people moving, right? That gets more people into homes. We need like 30,000 more units in the next few years just from people moving here. So the more housing that we have, the more the price goes down. And I know that can make people uncomfortable, but it is just a fact. It's supply and demand. And the more we can increase its supply, the lower the cost will be. So, and that's at every price point. I think it's important to make sure we have housing at the upper levels as well, not only the lowest levels. We need it all.
Exactly. That's important. I just want to say that I have friends who just recently graduated out of Prince George's County colleges that are here and universities, and they don't have a place to live here, and they have to move to Virginia or other places. So even though we have affordability, there is still an issue, with affordability as well.
Well, if they're moving to Virginia, they must be moving way out to like Loudoun County or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, definitely
And
further
by the
south.
way, those parts of Virginia, they have a lot of data centers, and you know what they're doing? They're decreasing their property taxes.
Yeah. And while we're on the subject of housing, what plans do you have for the unhoused?
It's so important because the biggest problem we have a couple of problems when it comes to unhoused people. Now, nationally, the problem is Ronald Reagan because when he was in power, he decreed that people should be able to be free, to be able to either be housed or not, without regard to if someone is in the right mental state. So if somebody is not in the right mental state and they're choosing to not go into housing, that to me, that shouldn't be allowed, but that's what we have right now. So that's one barrier that we have. It was a real problem with my district when I was in District 5. We had a woman named Michelle who was living on the street at Martin Luther King, over there, kind of across the street from the Target on the side where the Amazon warehouse is. She just piled stuff around her, and it was dangerous for the people walking by as well as uncomfortable. And then for she herself, man, it started to get really cold. It's raining, it's whatever. And she is out there, and we had a lot of trouble getting her off the street. It's not that we didn't want to, it's just she had the ability to tell us no. So eventually she was getting to the place where we were able to have an ambulance come get her because she was basically getting frostbite. It was snowing and she was out there and it was bad. So at a certain point when you're a danger to yourself or others, we can take you off the street. And so she did get some services. She had to go to the hospital for a while and she ended up in a psychiatric place. So in any event, that can be a big problem. Generally speaking, though, the problem is not enough affordable housing for people at that level, and people just running into a string of bad luck. So sometimes it's that their medical bills got out of control and they weren't able to keep up, and it's a domino effect. We have
And
to be.
how would you balance NIMBYism with building a new shelter for the county? Because we all know that it's much needed for those of us who have visited the shelters and seen, that the conditions where they're in, and also the limited amount of beds, not only for the unhoused, but individuals who are experiencing gosh, I'm trying to think of the word. Domestic violence. When it comes to familial status and being able to be housed, when you have a situation of that, meaning having boy children and stuff like that. So exactly what are we going to do, or what can we do to ensure that there are opportunities for us to house individuals short term or in the intermediary while, they're going through crisis?
I know that we have a shelter on the books that's being planned. I'm not sure though that it's being planned at the right location. And you talk about NIMBYism, we also have to keep in mind economic development. So look at what happened in DC down by um, what is that called? Ivy City. Okay, you're going into DC and on Route 50 on New York Avenue, and you run into eventually an area that has really gone through a lot of investment and really brought the area back. And then someone made the great plan to put a homeless shelter right there, and that has started to drive out some of the businesses that are there because some of the people, not all the people who are unhoused, but the ones who are having some mental health challenges can make it hard for the businesses to remain open.
But wouldn't
And
that be a separate issue? Because, and I know we try to move away from having inpatient facilities because of the stigma on mental health or being in one of those. But is it time that we get something of that caliber to have those patients move into those type of facilities for the care they need?
well, like I said, right now, the way the laws are, we can't force them into housing. We
Well,
just
not housing, but I'm saying into
Well, we
a
can't we can't
okay,
force them
well,
into anything. We can't make you leave the curb that you are
right.
standing on. So, but for the people who do want housing, we need to be able to provide that and to give them the help that they need. So we need to make sure that the housing, that the shelter, for example, is built near where they can get help with jobs, because that's usually the problem that they're having. They lost their job, their job doesn't pay enough, whatever their financial situation is. So if we can pair the shelter with job services, I think that's going to be one way that we can really help people get out of the shelter. We get off
Mhm.
the street and then get off out of shelter back into the community that they want to live in.
Thank you so much. And before we close, is there anything that you want to get out to the public or say before we end our interview for today?
Well, I'd say that one thing that I did over the past couple of years that I'm really proud of is getting a bill passed that creates more housing for people who have physical challenges. So it started with an idea that then Council Member Monique Anderson Walker had when she was on the council. And, it's more accessible housing. It's called the universal design, is what we were calling it. And she had some challenges getting it passed. But after she left the council, I decided to take it on and see if I could tweak it and make it work. And so I've been able to do that. Starting this time next year, as houses are going through the permitting process, they're going to have to display that they are what you call zero entry. So their doorways will be wide enough and there will be a flat entryway so that whether you're on a walker or in a wheelchair or whatever, that you're able to or even in a stroller, you're able to directly roll straight into where you live. And then the things that are on the first floor, the things you really need are there on the first floor. Even with townhouses, which are more of a challenge for that, we have it set up so that it's easy to be able to install one of those chair lifts on the stair. It's a lot harder with a townhouse to do all the things I'm talking about, but to be able at the time it's being built to put in the electricity at the right spot. So if you need to put in a chairlift that it's already done, makes a big difference. You know, so many of the fixes you have to do to a house happen. They're so much more expensive if you wait till you need it. If you have it already kind of baked into the plan, you might not even think about it when you're buying the house. And you think when you bought the house, when you were when you were 30, that you would never need any of these accommodations. But one day you look around and your grandma moves in with you. At least she could. She couldn't have moved in with you if you hadn't already had your house set up appropriately. Or you have something happen to you, either permanently or temporarily. I mean, it just things happen. You look around and you're still living there when you're 80, right? You bought the house when you were 30. You certainly didn't think you'd still be there, but you are, and you want to stay there. But if you don't have a house that physically meets your needs, you're going to be forced out. So I just want to make sure that that we're taking care of people at every stage of their ability, and to make sure that people live in areas that are more suited for them socially, because we all know that loneliness is a big public health threat. And the more we can do to build our housing in a way that accommodates people's interactions so that they are more likely to run into each other and build relationships, the better it is for our whole community.
Awesome. And thank you so much for joining us. And we truly appreciate your time here on CAG Chat. And I just want to say best wishes to you on your Rutherford County Executive, and have a great rest of your day.
And Sherman, don't forget, vote for me.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Oh, hold on a second.